Deepa.
Thank you.
This is Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Layla Falden.
And I'm Michelle Martin.
And I'm Michael Hill. Marketplace Morning Report is next. And later on Morning Edition, the number of Americans learning Mandarin Chinese has declined dramatically. But one elementary school in Washington, D.C. is seeing more demand than ever for Chinese language education. Students say it helps them connect with more people in their communities.
Like, we come up to them, and then we're just like, hey, we speak Chinese. Want to talk?
That story next hour on Morning Edition. 47 and clear now, mostly sunny, and 57 for a high today, breezy and gusty. And then tomorrow, slim chance of afternoon rain, mostly sunny, low 50s. Then on Thursday, sunny and low 50s and gusty. Very spring-like this week. It is 6:52.
WNYC is supported by Othello, now on Broadway. Denzel Washington and Jake Gyllenhaal star in Othello, Shakespeare's epic tale of deception and betrayal, now on stage in a strictly limited engagement. Tickets at OthelloBway.com.
We're leading with a noted economist who thinks $120,000 a year is a small price to pay to be sure we're measuring the economy in a cutting-edge way.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Amazon Business, committed to business buying solutions to empower leaders to streamline and focus on growth. Learn more about smart business buying at AmazonBusiness.com.
I'm David Brancaccio in Los Angeles. New Century Advisors chief economist Claudia Sahm is the one who came up with a closely watched economic indicator that bears her name, the SAHM rule, SAHM, S-A-H-M. She's been writing that it's a mistake for the administration to pull the plug on an obscure volunteer committee of experts that had been meeting once in a while to make sure that economic measures keep up with the times. And she joins us here. Welcome.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Federal Economic Statistics Advisory Committee. Now, this sounds like something an anesthesiologist would use to put you to sleep, but the committee is going away, and this is actually keeping you awake.
That's right. There's so much uncertainty about the economy, where we're headed, and it is so important that we have the very best data, the very best statistics on the U.S. economy. And that is no small feat, right? We have a $30 trillion economy. We have 170 million people in the labor force. It's a very dynamic economy, which is super. But that makes it harder to keep the measurement going. And this advisory committee has been in place for many years, and it is a resource to the main economic statistical agencies as a sounding board, as a how could we improve these statistics? What's the best research? And so for me, big picture, we want the best data we can have. And that committee was one resource that we had towards getting those data, and to see that taken away, it's a red flag.
The Commerce Department, under the new Trump administration, says the work of this committee is done, that its mission is, quote, fulfilled. This is not your view.
The work of a committee that is advising on statistics, how to make them more accurate, how to make them more timely, that work will never be finished. In some of the last meetings of the committee, the statistical agencies came to them with questions about how to measure artificial intelligence. I mean, this is a huge question going forward, and we want to be able to have data that represents all kinds of businesses. So the data either keep up or we just don't know what's happening. And then that's a really tricky place for anybody who's trying to make a decision, whether it's a household, a business, the government.
And I think I saw the same statistic as you did. This committee costs like $120,000 a year. Its members are not paid. $120,000 may sound like significant money to somebody, but on the grand scheme of the federal government, it's not an expensive item.
$120,000 to get some outside voices. And these are outside independent voices. They're academics. They're people who work in private sector that have a deep sense of expertise. So it's also about transparency. Like, it's great to have some outside eyes, on what's happening in these statistical agencies. So it really shows a very short-sighted view of the economic statistics and the kinds of investments that need to be made in them.
I'm hearing you say that less transparency, implied by turning off this committee, less transparency would have its own cost.
Absolutely. We need high-quality statistics so that people trust the data. This committee, these are people who are really experts. I mean, just love the nitty-gritty of the data. So if something were happening, if the data were being manipulated, they're the kind of experts that would notice. The statistics aren't being manipulated. I'm not saying that's an intention of this administration at all. But having a committee, having outsiders who are knowledgeable about what's happening in the agencies, that's a great way to make sure manipulation doesn't happen, because once you lose trust, it is so hard to gain it back. Like, why would we risk that?
Claudia Sahm, Chief Economist at New Century Advisors, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dr. Sahm came up with a way to track in real time whether we're in a recession. It's about the unemployment rate rising from a low, and you can look it up on a Federal Reserve website like an electrocardiogram of the economy. Claudia Sahm of Sahm Rule fame, are we now in a recession?
We are not in a recession right now.
Taking the Marketplace Economic Pulse, views from a range of perspectives here. Markets Dow and S&P futures are each down 0.1% now. NASDAQ futures are down 0.2%. Now, when news broke yesterday that President Trump might not impose some tariffs on some sectors like the auto industry next week, General Motors stock went up 3.3%. Ford closed up 2.5%, and Tesla, run by the right hand of Trump, Elon Musk, those shares closed up nearly 12%.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Commvault. When companies face ransomware and outages, they can recover data and business in just minutes with Commvault.
The lowest paid workers in America saw the fastest wage growth by far over the last 5 years. That's according to a new report from the Economic Policy Institute. Adjusted for inflation, the bottom 10% of workers saw their pay go up more than 15% between 2019 and 2024. Marketplace's Samantha Fields has more.
This time 5 years ago, between February and April 2020, about 22 million people lost their jobs, many of them low-wage workers.
Workers in leisure and hospitality and retail, right? All of those industries were essentially shut down.
Elise Gould at the Economic Policy Institute says when things reopened and employers started hiring again,
workers had a moment to pause, right? We had one time in history better unemployment insurance programs, and they could be a little bit choosier,
which meant employers had to pay more. This happened across the economy, for those in higher paying jobs too, just not quite as much. Their wages have risen about 6 or 7% since 2019, compared to 15% for people in the lowest paying jobs.
It's also 15% starting from a very low base. If you're making $10 an hour, 15% growth is $1.50.
Brad Hirschbein at the W.E. Upjohn Institute for Employment Research says even with that jump in wages, many of the lowest paid workers are still struggling, and inflation has hit them particularly hard.
They tend to buy things that are more subject to inflation, and those things also represent a larger share of all the things that they buy. Take rent, for example. We know that rent is a bigger share of people's budget at the bottom than at the top.
And rent has gone way up in the last 5 years, which he says has eaten into those wage gains. I'm Samantha Fields for Marketplace.
Our producers are James Graham, Neil Morrow, Naomi Rainey, Ariana Rosas, Alex Schroeder, and Erica Soderstrom. Our senior producer is Meredith Gerritsen-Morby. In Los Angeles, I'm David Brancaccio with the Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.
WNYC